Despite all of the red flags that surround it, MAID is accelerating, expanding, and deepening its roots into the Canadian social fabric. We do not know where this will end. We are in the middle of what may very well be the most consequential chapter of Canadian disability history. Others who look back upon this time will surely say that disabled Canadians did not sit idly by, not through the 1990s when ideologies of so-called compassionate homicide infiltrated our homes, our neighborhoods, our social discourse, not through the 2010s when their proponents emerged again, no longer chastened by their defeats in Rodriguez and Latimer, their coffers now full, their influence more far-reaching, and their strategies more subtle. We are still defending our comrades, our ways of being in the world, our status as equal selves. But as the death toll creeps ever higher, there is no sign that the frenzy to expand MAID to facilitate the premature deaths of more and more disabled people. There is no sign that that is losing momentum. In recent months, some strong investigative reporting has helped to clear away the fog of gaslight that government and medical spokespersons produce with their every breath. But that fog keeps rolling right back in. At best, we are offered symbolic gestures, like the amorphous and still distant Canada Disability Benefit, or more recently from the Special Joint Committee, the non sequitur recommendation that if the law didn't say the word disability, its ableist and eugenic implications would magically vanish. We can talk about these matters later if you wish, but for my time on this panel, I want to look in broad strokes at two core questions that are foundational for any interrogation of whether MAID violates our human rights. Who is harmed, and what is the nature of that harm? To start with the obvious, a foundational point, there should be no controversy about this. Track 2 MAID is only available to people with disabilities. Others who should know better may assert that Track 2 MAID is simply designed so that people with disabilities will have the same rights as everyone else when it comes to medically hastened death. But that's not true. We already had equal access to MAID for better or worse under Track 1 at the end of our natural lives, the same as everyone else. What Track 2 does, and what it does for disabled people only, is remove the fundamental safeguard of reasonably foreseeable natural death, and ensure that whenever we begin to despair of our lives, the state will help us die, and it will characterize our deaths as a benefit conferred under the law. But naming it a benefit does not make it so. Defending T2 MAID, and yes, I'm using Gabrielle Peters' acronym deliberately here with all of its historical resonances, representing T2 MAID as anything other than discriminatory on its face requires an acrobatics of twisting and turning equality on its end. The expanded version of MAID that has fueled the fires of disability rights advocacy since 2017 confers not benefits, but harms. harms upon the community that it targets. Earlier in the symposium and in your own media feeds over the past several years, you have heard disturbing accounts of disabled lives caught up in the undertow of MAID, both before and since the passage of Bill C-7. Those are the persons most directly harmed by Canada's MAID regime. What can we say about the nature of the harms that these individuals endured? Clearly, many of their stories confront us with the assaults of poverty, its material deprivations, its relentless stresses. We have grieved the lives of comrades who suffered the double assaults of poverty and insecure housing, of entrapment in unhealthy and inaccessible dungeons, like the one my friend Sophia documented in a video recording before her surrender to MAID. We have agonized as well at the thought of Chris Gladder's final days lying in soiled and foul-smelling bed sheets somewhere down a corridor of his long-term care home. We have witnessed as well the reality of lives given over to the particular assault of viable care denied, when you know that there are medications or therapies that would render life livable, when those treatment options are right there, but just beyond your reach. You are told that those options are for the wealthy, the folks at the top of the waiting list, those who happen to live somewhere else. But they are not for you. Madeline has spoken eloquently about this precarity, for she lives it every day of her life. Jennifer Hatch surrendered to it in the end. The T2 testimonials that we have before us have also made clear the insufferable pain of abandonment and isolation, of having no one to hold your hand, made vivid in the parting message of Rosina Camus. For obvious reasons, fewer of these cases make their way into public media, but they are out there. I have heard detailed accounts from credible sources of others, for example, young adults with speech and bodily impairment, now dead because they despaired of ever finding love and human intimacy. There is, of course, a complexity to all of these harms that we must unpack. Each of those I have spoken of so far was well entrenched in Canadian society long before the advent of MAID. And yet without MAID, and T2 MAID in particular, some of those people would still be with us. They could be here on this panel. None of them would have had their despair endorsed by the state. None would have had state agents dispatched to their homes to convert an ambivalent desire for death into an irreversible actuality of death. And let's not forget our disabled comrades who fell reluctantly upon the sword of MAID too early on their path toward natural death. Given that the court in Carter expressed in its Section 7 analysis that Gloria Taylor's liberty and security of the person were violated by a policy that might result in her taking her own life earlier than she would want, we have to wonder what the court would say about Sean Taggart, whose visits with his son were his reason to live, or Satya Kovacs, whose sun-drenched sofa and faithful dog anchored her securely to life. Both Sean and Satya knew their time for living was short, but they wanted it all, every day of it. Yet when both and too many others like them found themselves without adequate supports to remain at home, they gave up those extra precious days of life to maid, rather than face the wrenching pain of being torn away from their homes and cherished relationships. There are still more harms to speak of, and other persons harmed. MAID creates a broader circle of suffering for family members, loved ones, carers, health practitioners, and community. Identifiable individuals like Alicia and Christy Duncan, Trish and Gary Nichols, and many more. And the harm goes further still. For although it is cloaked in privacy, although investigations of questionable deaths are thwarted, death certificates are routinely falsified, and disaggregated data is all but impossible to obtain, still a MAID death is not a private act. It is a public expression of state power, and its effects are felt well beyond the individual bedside. So in the moments I have remaining, let me leave you with a concept I first encountered 2 decades ago in an article by the international human rights expert, Fionnuala Neoline. Neoline uses the phrase communities of harm to acknowledge the ways in which human dignity is dialogically constructed. She writes that our own autonomous entitlements are precariously balanced with the well-being and safety of others. Similarly, I would say that our conceptions of belonging and self-worth, though individually experienced by each of us, are made meaningful by the knowledge that others who share our distinct disability experience have equal claim to that belonging and self-worth. When state authority operates to erase that certainty, all of us are harmed. So when we calculate the harms that MAID has inflicted, and when we demand accountability for those harms, let's not overlook Neoline's communities of harm. We too are harmed by MAID. We feel it in ways that are not equal to the harms of those directly struck down, but in ways that nevertheless must be factored into the remedies we seek. We are part of what Neoline describes as broader communal locations of entitlement. Those of us who observe, as we do, the actions of a state that funnels those who suffer and are powerless into the fast queue for death, we feel that sting of disability's devalued status, perhaps just as indelibly as MAID's direct victim. It's something to think about. Thank you.